torn between excitement to replicate a style that I love and a growing dread every time I opened the canvas. It also didn't help that the whole process took forever. Normally, the time it would take to render out a character art or image would be 2 to 3 days, but this painting took
Fighting alongside comrades in an interdimensional cosmic odyssey, traveling through the multiverse, defeating foes and slaying enemies. Be the force ridding the planes of existence from catastrophic evil, or become the impetus causing a great calamity. Be reborn into a great phoenix of creation, herald of destruction, harbinger of mischief, giver of life, or the spawn of pure evil. Slice through realities of chaos and light and be transported to the space-time continuum of Marvel Rivals.
Today, I'm going to be drawing my original superhero in the style of Marvel Rivals. So without further ado, let's see who Comet is and what his superpowers are. Noah Aldrich, also known as Comet, is a 24-year-old German who was a university student pursuing his master's in field chem. After doing fieldwork in the post-apocalyptic ruins of the city, he came in contact with anomalous energy disruptions that caused his body to create increased kinetic energy. This causes him to move faster and faster the more active he is. Now that we have seen a short preview into who he is, let's take a look at the style of Marvel Rivals and how we can adapt it into the story of Comet. To help me understand the mindset and process of the Marvel Rivals concept art, I watched a video they posted elaborating on their workflow. I learned that the Rival team prioritizes character personality and energy in order to create captivating character designs. While they are designing these iconic characters, they're not driven to just create superheroes, but they are working to uncover the emotional core of the character by focusing on expression shots and the way they are posed. Their style of concept art is really loose and strays from the highly polished style of most games in the industry. With this loose style, they are able to accomplish iconic silhouettes with energetic shape language and character acting. The concept sketches aren't just informational, but also allow the artist to get attached to the characters by capturing their likeness even if it will be covered by a helmet. With these concepts, they are able to immerse the players in the universe and provide an authentic experience with the characters we all know and love, ushering a new but familiar win to the Marvel IP. The loose and energetic style they prioritize allows them to purposefully leave spaces of the design for interpretation, allowing the design to breathe and focus on the character's persona while cementing the style and visual expression. Above all, Marvel Rival concept artists really prioritize movement, dynamism, and communicating the character's charm in the most effective but immersive way possible. Its loose style allows for dramatic proportions, creating iconic silhouettes. Now that we've learned more about the thought process and style of the Rivals concept art, let's apply to Comet's character design. Before starting his final character art, I wanted to get a better sense of the style and mindset of the Rivals art style. To do this, I created some simple sketches mimicking the line art of their concept art. After doing a couple of these studies, I think the style really stuck when I did this Doctor Strange sketch. I wasn't following or copying any particular reference, but was just inspired by his cloak since it created such interesting shapes. I decided why not give it a go and sketched out a rough concept. I had so much fun drawing him, and I really understood the purpose of having a loose concept style to really communicate the presence of the character. After doing these sketches and analyzing the designs, I wanted to improve the design of my character. Not that there wasn't anything wrong in particular, I just felt like some changes could be made to make the design flow better and create a stronger silhouette. One of the biggest changes I made was his helmet. A part of his concept was that he had a bag filled with granola bars and water bottles. Since he's moving around and running a lot, he's going to constantly be burning energy, so in order for him to have more stamina, he snacks a lot to replenish his nutrients. I also like how you can see his expression and likeness more, allowing the audience to empathize with his emotions. Another change I made was his shoes. I wanted his fighting style to mirror capoeira. Capoeira? Capoeira.
Capoeira.
Since this fighting style includes a constant state of motion, I thought it would be perfect for his superpower since he generates more speed and kinetic energy the more he moves. So when I changed his shoes, I had two things in mind. One, giving him more shin and ankle protection for combat, and two, pushing his proportions more. I really wanted to play around with how Marvel Rivals push their proportions. I also think that having the protection beyond his shins visually tells you that his fighting style prioritizes leg work. The pants and the corda are also pretty great for that same storytelling as well. After finishing the turnaround and getting a good understanding of how they push proportions and structure their shape language, I wanted to study how they painted their character art. So let's take a dive into the splash art of Marvel Rivals. After observing and analyzing the character art, I noticed how they all have dynamic lighting but nuanced shadows, meaning that they all have a very recognizable light source, but the shadows form a soft gradient, creating a very understandable value path that allows the design to be easily readable. Although it's very easy to see the use of the lasso tool to create very graphic shapes, you can also see smaller parts of the drawing that have uninterrupted gradients. This combination of graphic shapes but smooth gradients create a really clean and polished rendering style, while still including the graphic and loose edge that was present and pivotal in the concept stage. The rim lighting also adds a very recognizable flair to all the art and makes them feel a lot more unified. It also allows the artist to play around with three-dimensional shapes while incorporating large two-dimensional shapes, forming a really appealing dynamism between the two. This rim light paired with chromatic aberration also adds a very notable flair similar to that of the Spider-Verse movies, which also include very comic-heavy motifs in their style. These different aspects all come together to form the legendary style of Marvel Rivals. Next, let's take a look at how I implemented this style into Comet's character art. Before starting Comet's character art, I wanted to create a process to follow that could lead me to a product that mirrors Marvel Rivals. Here's my theory. I believe they started by airbrushing the basic values and continued refining them by using the polygon lasso tool until all the basic shapes and planes had been shaded and highlighted. From there, they start drawing graphic shapes following the form and values of the figure and add in small hue variations to give the material more depth and believability. This rendering process achieves a very dynamic finish with graphic shapes and recognizable lighting while also painting in those nuanced shadows. Then, they add in line art to sharpen the figure and add in graphical flares to draw reference from the original concept art. Finally, they add in rim light and hand-drawn chromatic aberration for that iconic Marvel Rivals signature. None of this is an official process, just my own take on how they paint. So after finishing the rough sketch and coloring in the flats, I started airbrushing the basic values, primary light source, and secondary light source. Then went in with the lasso tool to refine the shapes and add more depth. In this phase, I added in a pink glow as a secondary light source representing his kinetic energy. Since he's running in the composition, I wanted to show how the energy forms as fireworks. To be honest, this phase was really questionable since it looked nothing like the style of Marvel Rivals and really put my abilities of trusting the process into good work. What kept me going was knowing that the next stage will look better, where I started adding the graphic shapes as the rendering. But to be honest, it didn't really help my mindset. It was going well at first since I saw how the shapes were giving it that Marvel Rival flair, but the more I went on, the more I started doubting myself. I felt like my skill as an artist was not enough to tackle this challenge. It didn't really get better as time went on. Rendering the painting and adding in the shapes over top the basic values felt so pointless. I would flip between the two layers and barely see a difference between the rendering layer and the basic value layer. I was torn between excitement to replicate a style that I love and a growing dread every time I opened the canvas. It also didn't help that the whole process took forever. Normally, the time it would take to render out a character art or image would be 2 to 3 days, but this painting took 8 whole days. doubling the time. Rendering the hair alone took me 2.5 hours. I'm definitely not used to separating so many days just to render an image and working with a completely new style on top of it, so I was thrown out of my comfort zone way faster than I expected, and I was getting so tired of working on this piece that I just wanted to stop. I even tried experimenting with how I wanted his kinetic energy to look. I stated before how I wanted the energy to look like fireworks, but the execution was way easier said than done. I was mainly looking at drawings of Jubilee from X-Men as my main source of inspiration. I was trying to capture the energy I felt from those drawings in my work, but the composition of it wasn't looking right. Painting in white circles distracted the eye from the main focal point, the character. So after some trial and error and what felt like a bunch of wasted time, I went back to rendering the figure. In short, that little kinetic energy did not help the situation. I was still grudgingly rendering with no excitement to fuel me. At this point, I was really fighting the urge to stop painting, but I couldn't really take any breaks as this video was already exceeding the time I wanted to finish it by. But the lack of motivation really hit hard. It got to a point where I didn't even want to think about superheroes or art for the rest of my life. That's a joke, but at the time, it didn't feel like one. I was honestly just ready to accept this as a loss.
Well, you can't expect to win them all.
Actually, no. I'm not ready to accept defeat. I have put too much effort into this to let it flop. I am going to take a break from the rendering, but I'm not going to stop drawing. I'm going to work on the rim lights. I know that will fuel me. Seeing me get closer to the finish line will get me the motivation I need. So yeah, let's take a break and work on that sweet rim light. This was truly a game changer. Combining the rim light with the chromatic aberration felt super rewarding. All the time that I have poured into this project and drawing finally felt validated. The character was literally coming to life with every stroke I painted. Putting in those cyan and red lines really breathed a new life into the character. I finally started to feel excitement again. Adding in the line art was also an amazing time. Seeing the corners tighten up and adding in those loose lines echoing the concept art felt so amazing. This stage was so much fun and put me in the correct headspace. It made me realize why I wanted to do this in the first place. This master study wasn't about drawing as close as I can to the Marvel Rivals style, it was about learning and broadening my horizon, capturing the enjoyment I feel when I look at the work and dedication that the art team put into the game. Reflecting that enjoyment into my art and learning something new is what fueled me to pursue this master study in the first place. I spiraled into replicating a style as close as I can, and I forgot the main thing that fuels the mind behind my art. Everyone who creates with excitement and pure intent in their heart is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been built on the rock. And everyone who does not create with excitement and pure intent will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house and it fell, and great was the fall of it. After painting in the rim light and line art, I wanted to give the kinetic energy another go. Instead of painting the energy on his body, as it would be really distracting, I decided to paint the fireworks behind him. I realized that these don't look like conventional fireworks, but I prefer this since they're supposed to be a representation of kinetic energy, and I do still think that I was able to capture the movement and sporadic speed of fireworks. All in all, it portrays the idea that I wanted to get across, and I feel that it visualizes his powers productively. Okay, the final stretch. All that needs to get done is that face. After completing the rim light and getting excited for this piece again, working on the skin and helmet wasn't so bad. Working on the visor was a little tricky though. Noah Aldrich has very intense eyes with a lot of fat around his eyelids and under eyes, creating dramatic shadows. In the painting, I wanted to make sure that I captured that likeness without making it creepy. After a little trial and error, I was able to come out with an outcome I liked. I moved on to rendering the lights reflecting off the visor, and lastly added the rim light and line art. Finally, after all this time, let's take a look at the final result. Working on this piece really worked my mental and drawing stamina. After completing the painting though, I feel so rewarded knowing that I can accomplish this level of finish. I know it's not a one-to-one replica of the Marvel Rivals style, and I'm not saying that I achieved that skill in just a couple days of trying, but a couple months ago I remember wanting to replicate their style but decided against it since I saw it too far from my capabilities. But now, after completing this project, I'm excited to see how my art can change and develop. This project removed a barrier of entry and made me want to try other studies that inspire me. Styles like the Spider-Verse movies, Riot Games splash art, and Overwatch character art. After some reflection on this experience, I wrote a couple notes of what I liked and didn't like. These reflections are about how I'm going to incorporate this new knowledge into my future works, not on the style as a whole. I really like the loose line art style that still shows a clear design with an energetic flair. I also really like the hand-drawn chromatic aberration, giving the drawing a lot of vibrancy and enthusiasm. Although, I don't like how long the rendering takes. The outcome looks great, especially in the Rivals official art, but the process and workflow behind it doesn't appeal to me. Neither is it fun for me, but I am happy that I'm able to accomplish it. I'm also not a fan of how the rendering makes the line art a last step. I'd rather have the line art be more prominent, especially since it's the part I find the most enjoyment in. Above all, my favorite part is how this style promotes dynamism and provides so much visual information with a lot of graphical impact. The combination between the two working together to create a new, unique thing inspires me to experiment and incorporate more duality within my art. This painting was such a roller coaster, but I'm so happy I persevered through it. I was able to take away so much new knowledge that's able to improve my skills as a whole. If you're interested in Comet's character, I'm going to be posting a sketchbook tour video next week where I filled a whole sketchbook with concept designs, written ideas, and storyboards for Comet's character. Filling it out was so much fun, and I'm so excited to bring it to you all. With that all said, I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video.